I feel like nothing I've ever seen on CNN, nothing I've ever seen on CNN has given me the information that I would need to move the country past Trump. You see this insane CNN Channel 5 whistleblowing?
They had me scheduled to go on primetime CNN with Don Lemon and Caitlin Collins.
The movie's not just about like the Capitol riot and all that. It's also about like media echo chambers. You know what I mean? And like the dangers of the 24-hour news cycle, and how I think mainstream media like Fox and even CNN like competes for views by running constant 24-hour news cycles based upon fear, division, outrage, and panic.
And I signed an NDA, but I'm going
I remember that.
to break it anyway. But
Based?
they had to give me this weird media training session. And it was like these 16 people I'd never met before, more people on a Zoom call than I thought you could ever even have. I had to get Zoom Premium. All these people in suits, like going through point for point, being like, you need to tell, if they ask you about Trump, say this. If they ask you about revolution, say this. If they ask you about your background, say this. Don't reveal that you're arrested for graffiti. All this weird ass shit. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of strange. They had one cool guy who literally had a Kangol hat on. I guess they thought he would like get through to me. He's like, yo, my man, so check this out. I know these people.
They deliver the deep state like media training to you in the form of an educational rap. That's really fucking funny.
These motherfuckers don't look cool to you, but they're cool, son. And I was like, all right. I don't know. I was like, whatever cabal you're a part of, it's freaking me out. But it was only an hour, but it was mandatory.
Okay, so remember what I said about how I'm the only remaining liberal? I'm going to keep this up for a bit because I think it's a good bit, and also I think it's true. Like, a liberal, like a capital L, ideological liberal, should look at this and think it's terrifying, right? Oh, so you're telling me that in order to even get your message through mainstream news outlets, to access the channels of power and communication that so many people rely on, you need to sign an NDA and agree to a bunch of set, like, limited conditional responses when asked about certain topics, thereby like limiting your free expression. It's one thing to say, don't say the N-word on live TV, right? But this seems like a serious imposition on your ability to express yourself. And this happens to all of them? What if you multiply this by the, a factor of their outreach and power? Every news network, every corporation, every person who goes on, it's almost like you could use wealth and power and a near monopoly on both of those things in the form of media to create a simulacrum, an alternate reality where the issues of the day discussed by media men have almost nothing to do with the real world, where the issues they bring up and choose to focus on are at best selective and at worst outright not reflective of the reality. A great example of this, in my opinion, if you wanted to get something that Democrats would get riled up about, is the fact that under Biden, the media would not shut the fuck up about inflation, gas prices, and the fact that Biden was old and senile. But right now, Trump is more brain melted than Biden ever was. Every video, every shot, he just yesterday was explaining girl math, like how 600% less of $6. He's actually gone. He's been gone for a while, but he's genuinely like not presently there. Like he's actually not, if he was not the president, he would be in a home. That's not a joke. It's very scary. And grocery prices are fucking insane. But in spite of that, how much do you see the media focus on either of those things? Because I don't. And I look at a lot of media. I mean, I look at the news pretty dang often, probably more than most of you. I do not see it that often, especially considering the fact that grocery prices are only going to get much worse because of the current crisis in artificial fertilizer production, thanks to the Iran war. Anyway, if you were an actual capital L liberal, I think all of this would be very, very concerning to you. But I don't think there are a lot of liberals, man. I think that there are a lot of apathetic people. I think that most people in America who vote Democrat would agree with what I'm saying right now. I think that if you took the average Democratic voter and you sat them down and you were like, hey, isn't this a problem? They would agree wholeheartedly. I do not think they would go, well, you need to look at the bottom line and what would you expect you could do and how else would you handle this and what else could you expect to do? I think they would just agree this is an issue. But I think that if I were to sat down like globeheads on Twitter or the Democratic Party itself, like their DNC leaders or their representatives, and I were to talk about this, I feel like not one of them would be willing to be bold enough to suggest a solution. You know, what are you doing about it? Your voters seem to care. What are you doing about it? You know, it's not liberal.
Yeah. So they told me I was going to go on CNN when Don Lemon was going to ask me about like my life and all this shit. And I get on and he goes, what can you tell us about the mental state of Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio in the lead up to January 6th? I'm just like, what the kind of snitch question is this? Like I'd embedded myself in this men's group, the Proud Boys, for a long time. Yeah. And I had still had those active relationships. Revealing any information could put my life in danger. I just wasn't ready for it. So I clapped back super hard and I was like, actually, Don, the film is about how the mainstream media, including CNN, uses the cable news system to push partisan divisions that have led to events like January 6th by essentially pitting working class Americans against each other and pushing culture war over class war issues. And he was like, what the hell? They cut the segment short. It was never aired. No one ever saw this. I leave the studio, and I guess the CNN had a handler for me where they technically work for A24. Like
I think a good addition to this. So obviously this should be horrifying. If you like democracy, like as a concept, this should be disgusting to you. This should be horrifying. But in addition, I think it's worth keeping in mind that CNN, so obviously J6 happened because Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, and other groups like that fueled, they fanned the flames. They fueled this like insurrectionary sentiment with months and months of they're stealing the elections hysteria, which led to J6, of course. But I think that what CNN does on the other side in a lot of ways is actually, it's almost more damaging. It's more pernicious. CNN doesn't do the equivalent of that for Democrats. There's no equivalent to that. There's no Dem version of J6. But what they do is they limit the scope of discussion to the point that the only way you can engage is through culture war sniping. A good example of this, in my opinion, I said this earlier on stream today, that the person who co-founded the New Liberals Twitter account, which is a centrist tank, funded by rich pedophiles or whatever, that they were here. I'll just find the tweet because I think it's really representative of what I'm talking about here, which is Abdul Al-Sayed is talking here about how Donald Trump is not himself the disease. He's just the worst symptom of the disease, which is factually true. 100%. Evangelism and oligarchs and wealth in political financing. Like, obviously, this is what led us to this point. The idea that Trump himself is a total aberration when the entirety of his party and voter base has shifted to be like him, ridiculous. But anyway, this dipshit, Jeremiah Johnson, says Donald Trump is in fact the main villain of U.S. politics, not big corporations. And that, I think, is the CNN motto. That's the line from CNN. They're not encouraging Democrats to do their own J6, but if you feed people this line, you are denied the ability to engage with the systems that produce Trump. You don't see how the sausage is made. And because you can't see how the sausage is made, you can't really do anything about it other than engage with the petty culture war gripes that Republicans throw out there. Destiny quote tweet an agreement. Well, yeah, that's the symptom of the problem. People uninterested in solving this fundamental. I think even Destiny has admitted that he's like really black-pilled about the future of this country, and he doesn't really know if this country is worth fighting for, if we're engaged in this like interminable cycle of like every 4 years you have to barely win against these hyper-fascists, and if you lose, the country like gets thrown back 30 years. But I don't think he's interested in the solution to that. You have to open up the sausage-making machine. Like, obviously, Donald Trump is not just a single aberration. He is a product of systems that allowed him to rise to the power that he obtained. But if CNN or Jeremiah Johnson or whatever are insistent that that's not real, it's just a culture war back and forth, then you can't do anything about it. You can't do a damn thing about it, man. You're lost. How do you expect? I've watched so much CNN in my life. I feel like nothing I've ever seen on CNN, nothing I've ever seen on CNN has given me the information that I would need to move the country past Trump. It's just, they just keep you locked in on that moment. 24-hour news cycle, day in, day out. This is what's happening now. maybe this is what should happen in the future, but there's no long-term plan, no strategy, no values, no ideology. Fox News has values. They're evil ones, but they're values. CNN just keeps you locked in the moment, nose to the grindstone. What's happening right now? Pay attention to this poll. Pay attention to this survey. Pay attention to this and that. News, info. What does it mean? Nothing. Nothing means anything. What is it? Look at this. CNN YouTube channel, just a tiny fraction of the stuff that they put out there. What's happening? This is happening. This is happening. This is happening. This is happening. Da 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 da. But you could watch all these videos, all of them. You could watch thousands of these videos. You could watch CNN every day of your life for years and years. It would not give you the information necessary to make the country better. Not one iota. Don't we agree? And I'm not even saying this from a lefty perspective. I'm not even saying, well, they're not socialist or whatever. It's not about the socialism. It's that they are uninterested in solutions to the quagmire. They're uninterested in them. They just cover what happens. They feed you information the way you feed goldfish. You just dribble food in. It's not meant to be used or to advance you in any way. It's just meant to placate, to sate, to hold your attention. Fox News differs in this respect. They have an actual ideological bias, a real agenda. At least they do sometimes. After J6, of course, Fox News actually retreated quite a bit. Fox News, it was like Fox News, for so long, Fox News had dipped its toe into not just political partisanship, but open, I don't know what the right term would be, sycophantry, I guess, like activism, you know? For a long time, Fox News has been interested in activism, not merely covering the world, but changing it. And after J6, it was almost like they dipped in too far and they pulled back. They were like, oh, wait, hold on, never mind, that was bad. But eventually they walked it back, right? Eventually they were like, oh, there were no consequences for J6, you know? CNN doesn't have an agenda. CNN's agenda is to sell you gray sludge and normality. CNN's agenda is deep states. It's Palantirs. They want the shape of your asshole as recorded by a scanner embedded in your toilet. They want money and power. They want you to worship Israel and go die for the IDF if you would kindly convert, circumcise yourself, and go over there and fight. They just want the people who are in power to stay there. Which means, of course, that they can never really arm you against inequality as a systemic failure. Inequality is illiberal. I can't believe I need to remind people of this, but equality is a liberal virtue. It is literally one of the main three, right? You know, it's one of the big three the French were keen on. It's like the idea that opposing this necessarily makes you some kind of out-of-touch, naive lefty, when I truly believe the average Democrat voter would agree more or less with what I'm saying here. It's not like Democrats like CNN, you know? CNN would hate the French Revolution. Dog, CNN would hate the American Revolution, not just the French. The French Revolution went topsy-turvy. The American Revolution would if you transpose the values of CNN today, back then, they would oppose it. Or at the very least, they would have, you know, subject material experts come on to criticize the intentions and the behavior of Washington and his generals. They would, you know, pick into it, but they wouldn't really take sides. They would not be active ideological advocates for an end to the monarchy. And they won't when Ellison buys it. Yeah, I want you to ask your average Democratic voter. Ask them, how do you feel about the Ellisons, these insane far-right hyper-Zionist billionaires buying CNN in addition to everything else they already own? Find me a Democrat who supports this. I think you'd have to look for a while to find one. But how often do the liberals, or Contra or Destiny, or this retard, how often do they talk about that? Like, I'm not trying to be spiteful or whatever. It's just like, man, where are the liberals? Where's the liberalism at? You know? Isn't this a problem? Don't we all agree? It's not just about the socialism. I acknowledge that socialism is not happening today or tomorrow or the day after or the next year. I get it. I know it's not popular enough to advance. And even if it was, God only knows how you'd get the ball rolling on that one. I get it. I know. I'm not fighting over that. What about, liberalism? Is it just a failure in imagination? Like we can't imagine a world that hasn't been carved up and bought by 4 billionaires? Is that it? It's all just capitalist realism. It wasn't like this ever, but now we can't imagine it having ever been any other way than what it is right now, which is the way it's never been before. I don't know. I'm doing the rambling again. I hope everyone understands, like, when I talk about neoliberalism being the big threat, it is because it is illiberal. Neoliberalism is the big threat because it has entrenched in our systems a set of incentives that are objectively illiberal, and that is done so very effectively and very deceptively, such to the point that liberals, people who 250 years ago would have pointed at this and gone, what the fuck? They know it's bad. Go back, go dig up the graves of Washington or Jefferson and ask them how they feel about the Ellisons buying their fucking 80th media property. Ask them how they feel about that. Just engage with it. Engage with their writing, man. They made mistakes too. It's not like I think everything they said was correct. I think that by and large they were smart guys. I just don't think you have to be that radically progressive to understand that it's wrong for Callahan over here to have his dick and balls hooked up to a car battery before getting to go on CNN and having the segment canceled right after, or the Ellisons owning everything, or as is pointed out in this bit on the Reddit that Thana linked me earlier, the fact that Peter Thiel is funding Clavicular. They own everything, man. Sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy because it makes me wonder if I'm like the only one who's not bought. Like, it makes me feel like a schizophrenic. All the independent media, the Joe Rogan types, they're bought. People like Nick Fuentes have been publicly associating with the crypto financiers for years and years. We know they have ties. He had dinner with the fucking president. Does no one else think this is a problem? Why are you not bought? I don't know. I guess I haven't found an article of clothing expensive enough yet to warrant it. Contra jerked off Hillary. Destiny's gone to Tel Aviv to jerk off all the IDF. So I don't know. Is it everyone? Hassan's been to the red carpet, I think. When I look at my emails every day, most of it is just people saying like, hi, but with 10,000 more words. Am I the only one? I'm losing my fucking mind, man. The closest I've ever been to the deep state is the founder of Progressive Victory has done work in DC. So the canvassing group was founded by people who have done canvassing. That's the closest I've gotten. It does make me feel fucking insane sometimes. I hope you all understand that. And it's the worst part, I can never prove it because I feel like it's one of those things like liars will always accuse everyone else of lying even when they're truthful. Everyone else who is getting paid by Peter Thiel, they're probably looking at me being like, Vosh is still pretending he's not getting paid by Peter Thiel. I don't know what to say.
I said, this black box is all connected. And she's panicking. She's like looking at her phone on hers. I'm like, what's going on? And she was like, Time Warner C-suite is furious. And I'm like, who is Time Warner C-suite? And she said, you don't know that the same people that own HBO also own CNN? Yeah. And so they looked at it as like an in-house beef. And I was like, no. I was just projecting my opinion. And they were like, don't you remember the media training? You weren't supposed to do that. She was panicked. They canceled my press tour right then and there.
It's just, yeah, I don't know, man. Like, no wonder our democracy turned out the way that it did. If we even have one. Managed democracy. No, it's not just a Helldiver's turn. We never had a chance, did we? Maybe not. The last liberal. We've never had a true democracy. It's always been influenced by those who have the most assets. This is true, but it's also like, it's always been like that and always will be like that. But there are degrees of scale, and the fact that there has always been a bias in who has access to the media doesn't mean that the situation we're in right now isn't extraordinary, you know? American media did not used to be owned by 5 companies. It didn't used to be like that. Janet Mills just vetoed an AI moratorium. Cool. Like I said, has nothing to do with what the people want. The people are a completely like vestigial element of the process. She vetoes the moratorium on AI data centers, not because people want it vetoed, but because to her, the voter is an inconvenient like adjacent problem to deal with. They're the wall you have to get through to get power. Her engagement is directly with the AI companies. They kind of treat voters like how a teacher treats students, not going to lie. Yeah. Anyway, do you think this represents the interest of the Democrats in Maine? Do you think the Democrats in Maine are happy about this? Do you think this has anything to do with the voters in Maine? Do you think that Chuck Schumer picked Janet Mills to be potentially the oldest first-term senator in U.S. history because she would do such a good job of representing the people of Maine? Is this all liberal to you? Does this feel liberal? Graham Plattner's body could be covered head to toe in Totenkopfs, and voting for him would still be more liberal than voting for Mills. He could have so many Totenkopfs on him it looks like he's wearing blackface, and it wouldn't matter.